Hello friends, welcome and welcome back. I cannot believe we're here again at another monthly wrap up. Today we'll talk about all the books that I got through in June. So like we've been doing all year, we're gonna start with some stats and then we'll get into my reviews of each book. So in total, I read 16 books this month. We're getting up there. It took me an average of 3 days to finish, which I'm kind of proud of, not gonna lie. That's a good number. No surprise here, but my top two moods were emotional and dark. I don't really understand why, but we did get two, I think, newer ones for the next two ones, which are reflective and mysterious. I feel like I just be reading very moody books. What can I say? A girl's got a taste. Considering I started off, like I was reading Stephen King recently, and I realized that like my reading journey really started off. I really only thought that I liked Stephen King and that's it. And even when I was younger, I used to just read Goosebumps, so I thought I was a horror girly. It wasn't until like 2 to 3 years ago that I really expanded my taste. So it's interesting that the moods have still like stayed. Anyways, I mostly read fast-paced and medium-paced books. I'm not surprised by this. I just don't tend to lean towards or enjoy slow books. About half the books I read were less than 300 pages. And that doesn't surprise me because I was participating in Escape the Readathon last month, and that is a competitive reading challenge, and the number of books that you read mattered. And so I was reaching for a lot shorter books just to try and get the like goals in for the game. We didn't win. As a matter of fact, we were third place, so out of 4 teams, but it was still very fun. I just wish that I had focused more on just the books that I had on my TBR. That's what I'm doing this month. I'm also participating in the Amazing Readathon, except that the good thing is in the Amazing Readathon, page count matters for points. So hopefully I will get through my physical TBR. I once again did not reach my goal of reading 1 nonfiction book a month. Oops. It's all right. We will do better next month. In terms of genre, I read an overwhelming amount of fantasy this month, and I was actually really surprised because I'm not usually into young adult, but young adult was like my next biggest category, followed by contemporary, which I keep getting like high numbers for, but I just don't really understand. They must be like subcategorizing these books as like contemporary romance, contemporary fantasy, and things like that, because otherwise I just can't justify this. This month, I also, since I was reading for Escape the Readathon, did a lot of audios, 69%. I'm not really surprised by this, but I do want to decrease this number in the future. Like I would really love to continue to physically read books. It's just the way that I feel that I enjoy it a lot more. I prefer an audio for like a fluffy romance or something like that. You know what I mean? I read 13% print books and 19% digitally on my Kindle. I think I'd be okay if it's 50-50. You know, I just don't want to lose the fun of physically reading. Plus, I've really been enjoying like tabbing my books, annotating and stuff like that recently, which you can't do when you're listening, unfortunately. And no surprise here, my average star rating went down. This month it was 3.39, and honestly I do think that I was choosing quantity over quality, and you know, it's surprising to me because in previous months I was focusing on reading down my physical TBR, which is now back down to 14. That's not good. I mean, not down, up. It's up to 14, which I was at 6. How did I buy that many books? I don't understand. Anyways, I thought that, you know, I was at like a 3.8 in previous months. I thought because I had been reading books on my physical TBR that I just kind of been putting off for a long time, that this number was going to get higher eventually when I finished the TBR and started reading more books that I picked and enjoyed. But then this month I just kind of was just reading a lo loco, and my star rating shows it. It's very unfortunate. Anyways, in June, I will have no control over the choosing of the books because I just have to read these 14 books on my TBR. Will I ever finish? I have faith in myself that I'm going to finish this year at some point. It's just the fact that it was every month I'm getting the book of the month books, I'm getting a afterlight book, and I am getting 2 fairy books. And then I also just recently did a book haul for my birthday where I treated myself to a couple books, but that's okay. We're gonna get this down. I have faith in myself. Let's get to these reviews. All right, let's get into these book reviews. So starting off on like not a very strong note, I first read The Death of Jane Lawrence, and I feel like I misremembered what this book was going to be about, and so I was a little bit disappointed, and I think that's because my expectations were in the wrong place. I think I was confusing this with the premise of another book called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, I just, like, this didn't hit the way I thought it was gonna hit. This book is basically about a girl, and she convinces this dude to marry her. And he says, okay, I'm gonna marry you under the condition that you will never come to my family home. And she's like, all right, fine, whatever, because this is like back in the day when you need to get married by a certain age, and she already passed her like season or whatever, and it's like a mutual agreement for the two of them. However, of course, she ends up going to the estate and things are awry and amiss, and this is a horror book, and the way that they fall in love with each other over a scalpel is like honestly very reflective of the like odd and disturbing nature of this book. It definitely took a turn that I was not expecting and that I definitely did not enjoy. So I gave it 2.75 stars. It was like, honestly, for most of this, I was just tuned out and just finishing the book. Then I read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, and I still have to get my trophy copy. But basically, this book was about a girl and a guy who meet. They have a really great date, and it seems like this could be endgame for them. However, she, the next day after having this date, is going to move across country to take care of her family. And I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars because the criticism that this book gets a lot is that it's like a trauma dump, and I definitely could see that in certain parts of the book where I was just like, that was a very heavy topic that kind of felt like it was just thrown in there for no actual reason other than to just like give the character more depth. I don't know how to explain that, but either way, it did feel at some points like a little bit too much. But overall, I thought the writing was really good. I love like the quirkiness of like their first date and how like their relationship gets started. So I still enjoyed it. Then I read Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood, and you can hear more about my thoughts on this book in my Reading in Puerto Rico blog. Basically, this is about two gamers. They are working for like opposite companies, and these, not opposite, the two companies are about to work together to make a video game, and they go on a retreat to see if they will work out. And these two people find themselves stuck together in that retreat, having to help their rivaling companies mesh well and prove that they can actually make this. This was another 2.75 star book. I just feel that Ali Hazelwood doesn't do well with developing her characters in shorter works. I think she does a really good job of this in her novels, and I don't usually tend to enjoy her like shorter works, which is, it is what it is.
It is what it is. You get what you give. I cannot see be much better than this.
I'm gonna take my glasses off because the glare is crazy. The next book I read is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the prequel novel to the Throne of Glass series. I read this third in the series because that is the publication order. A lot of people talk about whether you should read this third, fourth, first, and I initially wanted to read it first because it's a prequel, so then I would be in chronological order, but there were so many opinions and I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna read it in publication order. And I'm glad I did it because the writing style, it just got better from the first book to this one, and I can't imagine myself having continued the Throne of Glass series if I had thought that it was getting worse. That being said, I did give this 3 stars because, again, the writing style was just a bit immature for me. However, I did see that there were like a couple of elements to this story that I was starting to get invested and interested in, so I will be continuing the series. But right now, these books are just not like 100% impressing me with their plot. But there is something in me that's just like a little hooked and interested to see what comes next. And like also, what is the hype? I also think, if I'm not mistaken, that my next one is Heir of Fire. And I hear a lot of people talk about that one. So hopefully it gets good. How pretty is my Puerto Rico journal spread though? Like, come on now. I can't wait for the flip through on this one. It's a goodie. Next is Fan Service by Rosie, Danon, and this book is about a guy who is basically a washed up Hollywood celebrity who used to be on this like werewolf show, and he was the main character of the show. And he starts to feel like he's going through a werewolf transformation. Everyone thinks it's kind of like a stunt because he's washed up and he's trying to get back on the scene. But he's like, what the French toast is going on here? So he enlists Alex. And Alex is a moderator for an online blog that follows everything The Arcane Files, which is the show that he was on. And he's like, you documented everything about the show and the lore, so you must be able to figure out what's going on with me. I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but we're gonna let it go. I gave this 3.25 stars. I think that this was like a cute, little quirky, funny. There were some like millennial jokes, so you know your girl understood them, and that's all I have to say. Honestly, like the more time that passes, the less I remember this book, but I still remember like the vibes, you know, like I had a good time. Then I read book 4 in the Natural series. That's Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book was like 4.75 stars. I have to say that it was so close to being a 5-star read, but the thing is, like, these little like YA vibes, like the little games that these kids would play and stuff, would really irk me. And if we didn't have those things, I think this could have been like a 5-star read. But it was just like those little tiny details that would like pull me out of the book real quick. And I should probably tell you what the Natural series is about. So it's basically about this girl, Cassandra, and she has a overly developed ability to profile people, and she gets recruited by the FBI to use that ability to profile for criminals. And she is entered into the Naturals program, which is a bunch of other young kids who also have natural abilities that could be useful to the FBI. And so in the 4th book, we're following, I don't want to give too much away, but we're just following another serial unaliver that is connected to these kids in the Naturals program. And it's just such a vibe, y'all. It is chef's kiss. the series as a whole, I would say, is like a 5-star series for me. Then I read 12 by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is the book that follows immediately after Bad Blood. And I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I lied to you. I gave it 3 stars. It was just like, we get an introduction to the characters a couple years after the end of the series. And they're back with a child who was in one of the cases that they solved in the original series. And so you get really invested and excited because it's like, okay, Mackenzie, like, girl, what are we doing now? And honestly, it doesn't really deliver. So it was like a fun time, but just like after coming back from the high of Bad Blood to that, it just didn't give, unfortunately. I do have it in my head though that I want to one day print out and bind this book because it is a online exclusive, I believe. Like, it's an ebook exclusive, and I don't know how I'll be able to like get the physical like version of it, but I want it to be on my bookshelf. So maybe if I bind it myself, is that allowed? Am I gonna get sued? I mean, I'm not selling it, I just want to put it on my bookshelf. Anyways, then I read Small Things Like These, and this is essentially a book about a guy named Furlong. He lives in this small little town that's run by the church, and he discovers a little secret that really makes him question his everything. I also gave this 3 stars. I feel like if I had read it physically, I maybe would have given it a better rating. The writing was really great, but I wasn't a huge fan of the abrupt ending, and just like, I felt like most of the book was world building and like setting us up for the book, and then it was just over. But maybe if I watched the movie, I'll understand more. Because for some reason, I feel like things are like just probably went over my head or something, you know? Then I read The Lost Sisters by Holly Black. I believe this is also an online exclusive that I would also really like to bind up so it could go in the collection. But this is book 1.5 of the Cruel Prince, aka the Folk of the Air series, and this follows just kind of like a little bit more backstory, relationship, and interaction between the 3 sisters in the original series. I gave this 3 stars. I felt like, honestly, 3 stars is maybe very generous because I couldn't figure out what this added to the story. Maybe it was just a money grab, but there was like nothing in here that pushed the story further, helped us understand the characters more. Like, I just don't really understand the point. Next, I read The Rose Bargain by Sasha Peyton Smith. And can we just take a moment because this book is freaking gorgeous. Anyways, this is essentially about England in 1848, and the season has just begun, and all the girly pops are getting ready to put themselves out there and hopefully get a husband, when the queen announces that her son is going to be one of the eligible bachelors that's ready to get married. And of course, she's a fairy queen. All of them are human, but she's a fairy, and she kind of rules for all eternity. Like, she's been the queen for like ever. Anyways, the point is that she has all these like trials that any woman who wants to marry her son potentially need to go through, and they discover that in the middle of like this whole season and everything, there's this whole plot going on that could take down England and this girl's heart. I give this 3.5 stars. I really thought that the idea of like these girls making bargains with the fairies, the idea of like the 2 worlds and like the mystery behind the fairy world, and the fact that we are in a human world that's led by a fairy queen but we don't know much about the fairy. It's just, it gives like this like mysterious vibe. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I did feel like some of the trials and stuff that were in here, or basically all of them to be honest, were pretty mid. They were underwhelming. And I think that's because this is like a YA book. You know what I mean? I'm realizing that I'm just not really a YA girly that much. And that's okay. I had to make a cup of hot chocolate because it is so flipping cold in this house right now. I don't understand why. Like, it's not even this cold outside. Okay, then I read Convenience Store Woman. This is essentially a contemporary fiction that follows this woman who is a little bit older. I think she's in her 40s and she still works at a convenience store, and she has some like social differences from other people. And this just kind of talks about her navigating life, navigating working at a convenience store. She feels like because she's trained and they tell her like, this is what I want you to say when a customer does this and that, etc., it's easier for her to function in society when she's working at the convenience store. However, it's not accepted in society that she still works there at her age. You know, there's all this pressure to have like a career and a real job, get married. So she takes matters into her own hands and does something a little unconventional. Honestly, I was so surprised by how much I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, which I'm a little bit surprised that I didn't give it a higher rating, because when I left, I just felt like this book left me so pensive. I was thinking a lot about the way that I treat certain people in my life and certain needs that they have. It just really had me thinking a lot differently about my social interactions in the real world. Because she does talk a lot about how difficult it is to kind of know that there's something a little bit different about you, but not really being able to figure out what it is that's different from other people and how other people think. And it just gives you a really different perspective on people who have you know, disabilities and who are neurodivergent, and how you treat them and how you function with them in society. So I highly recommend this read. I'm really surprised because I had previously DNF'd this book, and I don't know why I decided to pick it up this time, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that I did. Then I read The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. This is about a dude who's born old and he ages backwards, so he's getting younger. I gave this book 3.25 stars. I was really surprised. I mean, I guess it's called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, so it does read kind of like a case study, and basically you're kind of getting like it's not bulleted, but like bullet points of like major events and relationships in his life as he decreases in age. It mostly just talks about the relationship between him and his wife. So I feel like, to be honest, the author could have done a lot more with this, but for what it was pretty interesting. And it was a quick read. The other stories in this edition that I read were just like honestly not catching my attention at all. So that's unfortunate. Then I read I'm a Fan, and I'm a fan of this book. I gave it 4.25 stars. Honestly, I think I was just watching a random video and this book came up as a recommendation for like a weird girl fiction, and I feel that I've been really into that vibe lately. Basically, this follows a woman, I think she's unnamed if I'm not mistaken, and she is obsessed with this guy. She's in love with him. She calls him throughout the story the man I want to be with, and then he is basically a womanizer. He's just like with multiple women at a time, and she becomes obsessed with one of the women that he's sleeping with. And she also is referred to the entire book as the woman I'm obsessed with. So essentially, this book is just navigating her obsession with the woman, how she stalks her on social media and things like that, while also navigating a relationship with the man that she wants to be with. even though he does not give sis the time of day that she deserves. This book is kind of unhinged, I'm not gonna lie to you, in like the best way possible. There were so many good quotes in this book. I wrote down a few of them, but one, for example: society taught me that I can do anything a man can do, and then it showed me that I can't. Just like little gems that like really make you think, you know what I mean? Okay, then I read The Man Made of Smoke by Alex North, and I feel like Alex North is like one of those authors where it's like a quick read and it's entertaining, but like nothing crazy. Not to be rude or anything, but anyways, The Man Made of Smoke is about this dude named Dan, and he witnessed a crime when he was a child. Then as he gets older, his dad is unalived under mysterious circumstances, so he goes home to investigate it, and he's starting to question whether the person that he witnessed in the past is connected to his father's unaliving, if you will. Honestly, I was really tuned out for most of this story. When the reveal came, I was like, who's that? Which is not a good sign. But like, I still gave it 3 stars because did I enjoy the journey? Even though I had no idea where we got to? Yes, absolutely. I did. And then I read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I gave this book 4 stars, but I'm not going to talk anymore about it just because there's a lot going on. You can form your own opinions by just looking up J.K. Rowling, but I just don't feel like talking any further about this book, unfortunately. And then the last book I read was How the King of Elfame Learned Hate Stories by Holly Black. This one is also part of the Folk of the Air series, the Cruel Prince series. This one is it's both prequel and stories between the main series books. It's, I believe, 5 different stories that just kind of give you more perspective into Prince Carden, how he became the prince that he is, or the king that he is, how he got like kind of hardened, his background and things like that. And I enjoyed it. I don't know, I like hearing about like all the betrayal and like messed up stuff and his like traumatic background, so I enjoyed this one. And as always, a little June TBR. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I did pick out 5 books that I want to make sure that I finish by the end of the month. And the first one is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is a book that I have had on my Amazon wish list for a very, very long time, and recently I went to go visit my best friend up in Connecticut, and she was reading this book and she's been raving about how much fun she's having, and she is like a very occasional reader, so the fact that she's living for it, I have to read it. On top of that, she has never failed me in a book recommendation because she knows me so well, so I hope this one doesn't disappoint. Next on the list is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This is his 2nd published book, and I have a goal to read all of his books in publication order. So this bad boy is gonna get read next, and I think it's about time that we get continued on this challenge because I've done only 1 this year. And I said I would do 1 every month, so I got some catching up to do. Next we have a new release that came out in May, and I did start this one, but I gotta finish it. It's Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. I will read anything that she writes. I've literally bought every single book on release date since her first book, The Love Hypothesis. So I am very excited to continue my Ali Hazelwood journey, and this one is supposed to be a sequel to Not in Love, which I didn't really enjoy, but I'm hoping that because we're following a different couple and characters in this book, that it will pull me in a little bit more. But I'm noticing that she's in like her sequel era, because she's also, I think the next book she's coming out with is Mate, which is the sequel to, I don't know why I was gonna call it the Nodding book, Bride. It's called Bride. And then I have The Unworthy by Agustina Basterica. This is the author who wrote Tender is the Flesh, and I really enjoyed that book. And I hear that this one also has themes of like carnivorous stuff going on, but this one follows like a person who's in jail in a nunnery or something like that. I'm not sure how that works, but I'm excited for it. And this one should be an easy read. It's pretty short. Okay, and then the last one on here is one of my book of the months, and I honestly had read the description of this, had no interest in reading it, but now everyone is talking about this book and I feel left out. So I have to read it, and that's Silver Leap by Danny Francis. I have no clue what this book is about, and I'm just hoping that all the hype is worth it. And also, I'm hoping that one day the reveal around the mystery of this author is going to be iconic. Fingers crossed. But this is, I don't know, this is kind of giving me Fourth Wing vibes. Not in like the description or anything, but I don't know why I feel like it's going to be similar writing. And that's all I have for y'all. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, leave a lightning bolt emoji in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button, and if you want to join the family, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you all when I see you next. Bye.